This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series is brought to you by Malwar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. For oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec, visit www.malwar-transport.ca. And for an expert and professional trucking insurance firm specializing in property and casualty insurance solutions for freight across Quebec, Canada and the United States, visit www.transportexpert.com. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for tonight's coverage of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series Season 3 Round 8, powered by Malwar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert and live exclusively on TRTN. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here in overcast conditions as we approach the penultimate round of Season 3's championship here at the home of the Dutch Grand Prix, situated right here in Zandvoort, North Holland in the Netherlands at the Circuit Zandvoort. Founded in 1948, comprised of 14 turns and 2.6 miles of FIA Grade 1, this circuit is of course the home of the Dutch Grand Prix and has been so since the inception of the Formula 1 regulations in 1950. It also sees racing from GT World Challenge Europe, DTM and the ADAC GT Masters Series. A very winding circuit then, praised for its roller coaster-like design. Zandvoort has given us many an entertaining race in wet and dry conditions here on TRTN through the last couple of months, with now the GT4s of the Pro-Am Cup America Series making their way here as we get ever closer to the end of the season at Mark here. So we've already had 2 weeks worth of delays ahead of this round, technical issues that withheld us from going live about 2 weeks ago. So now here on May 12th, we find ourselves facing down the barrel of the last double sprint of the season. Coming up then after that on May 19th, we'll be visiting Bathurst, New South Wales, Australia for 90 minutes of racing to finish off Season 3. But the championship standings, as it would happen, could get wrapped up today in favour of one. Taking a look then in towards the championship standings, we find at the moment Christian Labbe in the lead of the pro standings. Behind him then David Tanguay in second, with Byron Forrest in third. Behind is Wishful Winnings in fourth place with 182 points. Taking a look further down the order then, George Todd makes 5th place with Vincent Simard in 6th with 152 points to Todd's 156. Anthony Valorio for Alpine makes 7th with 135 points. Kevin Quain in 8th with 130 points. In 9th place then, we find that of Clinton Bourne, currently holding on to 115 points, rounding out the top 10 for the pro standings. Timo de Tosto with 99 points in the championship. Taking a look at the AM standings, Andrew Veldkamp leads up over the Jackal by only 8 points between the pair, heading in towards round 8's double sprint today. Brandon Carr makes 3rd place for Aston Martin, with currently 211 points. Behind him is Didier Potvin on your screens at the moment with Malwar Racing's AM division for Aston Martin. He's up and ahead of Cal Ford in 5th, Brad Peacock in 6th with Stephen Black in 7th. Christophe Dupois makes 8th place in the AM standings. Behind him, Fabian Yohure in 9th with 83 points. Rounding out the top 10, Karina Stinson with 80 points. We saw not too long ago then in the coverage of the World Series Stinson's first ever podium in the AM category, and her first ever podium, as it would appear, possibly on ACC. A very, very special moment, and it's spearheaded for the case of Stinson, the approach now into the Malwar Racing team itself, as we've got the announcement only about 24 hours ago, just less than that actually, that she had been taken into the team's ranks after her successes in Bathurst this weekend just gone. Following here with Didier Potvin to take a look into the session at large to only find 3 cars currently up on the timing chart, so bringing us into the topic of today's session at hand. Just before that, the talks of the Teams Championship that sees Malwar in the lead in the pro teams and Breaking Point Racing continuing to lead in the AM standings, albeit by a thinning margin to the Malwar Racing AM division. Rounding out the podiums on both sides then is High Caliber Racing and Milk Crate Racing, as well as Malwar Racing's AM division and Milk Crate Racing's AM division. Taking a look into today's session regulations, the double sprint format emerges for the last time this season. We're in the midst of 10 minutes of free practice coming up around the corner, 30 minutes of qualifying, a staggered qualifying order, first 15 minutes for the AMs, last for the pros, and then 2 30-minute races in tandem back-to-back then, round 1 and round 2 of this round, or race 1 and race 2 more specifically, 30 minutes with no mandatory pit stops therein. Watching here as the times start to pour in, Byron Forrest and Dylan Vekere stand shoulder to shoulder down to the, I'd say this is the tens of thousandths of a second we'd have to be speaking here to find ourselves a difference between the 824 and the 161 up at the front of the field here. Taking a look at balance of performance regulations for this round of the championship to find Audi lightest in class, with McLaren following in a close second. KTM losing 13 kilos, Chevrolet losing 11, BMW losing 8, and Aston Martin losing 7. Alpine gained 1, Mercedes gained 3, and Porsche gained 30 for the run into today's round. We see in the case of both Forest and Vettori, uprooted for the fastest time by Christian Labey. Getting back into the discussion, as we mentioned just before the run into things here of today's round. Actually, just before we just started to discuss the championship standings, is the case that Labey does actually stand upon the chances to wrap up the championship today here in Zandvoort. How is he able to do this? Well, having a look at the gap right now between the leading pair of the pro standings reveals a gap currently in the range of 38 points between that of Labey and Tanguay. Now, Labey has to keep this at 36 points by the end of this round in order to not be numerically within a chance of being caught. So he stands upon the chances here to go for a hat-trick of championships in this round. So there's very, very high stakes involved to his performance today. We'll get a look into the provisional look. I believe we do have, yes, data for qualifying predictions. Just having a glance, yes, albeit they're about 2 weeks out of date, but the logic still applies to today's grid. We'll see here with Labey, that gap having been brought closer. Byron Forrest by 280 thousandths of a second now definitively charges ahead of Dylan Vettori, ahead of that what was previously a joint fastest time. Wishful winnings in chat saying, which driver is Labey's son? Funny you should say. Interesting news, of course, was revealed to us by Christian Labey that his son would be joining the league next season, if I'm not mistaken. Season 4 would see the father-son duo compete on the grid for the first time here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. It's going to be very interesting to follow through that story then at the very early stages of his son's competitive development in sim racing. It's going to be rather interesting to see then, of course, following in the footsteps of his father, who by today's standards could very well be on his chances for a third consecutive GT4 championship title in this series. See then for Forrest, that gap having been brought up now to just shy of 7/10 of a second. Byron Forrest, the only driver right now here in free practice to be within a second of that fastest lap. We do get to see as well the arrival of some drivers we've definitely seen before. These are some drivers from the Let's Racemate team over on the World Series. This is Matthew Badensky and Cedric Grenier-Massey. They joined the grid down here in GT4 for both Chevrolet and BMW respectively. I believe, yes, we do get to see the new coat of paint there on Karina Stinson's KTM amidst her current signing to Maloir Racing. This was quite an exciting bit of news, of course, following on her successes with Aston Martin at Bathurst. Now we see the KTM clad in the Maloir Racing colours as the roster continues to grow then for the team, and she'll compete for today's round as it appears for the AM Division's chances to lead the team's championship in that category. Glancing in, though, to see we are amongst the final minute of free practice. Coming up around the corner then is 30 minutes of qualifying. Before we get to that point, there is, worth noting here, race control decision after round 7 of the championship. Currently states car number 28 of Fabian Yahure has been given a qualifying ban for round 8 for incident reports on round 7. So Yahure sadly is going to sit this one out. A shame too, given that his pace, at least in, I believe in data form, has been very, very solid. And we see here locally on the track, 4th fastest among the AMs behind Brad Peacock, Didier Potvin and Brandon Carr. So otherwise would have had a pretty sizable chance for the run in towards qualifying today. Of course, this is going to be extra impactful for Yahure because it means not only is he going to be sitting out qualifying, he's going to be missing his chances on both grids, as this is what the qualifying will entail. That 30-minute session, even when split down the middle for the categories today, is going to be a case that decides both grids on today's round of the championship. You also see a brand new signing. Now, this one slipped under the radar for us, but this is Adam Jeffrey having joined the Maloir Racing team. Of course, this was likely signed around the same time then as Stinson's contract to the team. And this is going to make some rather interesting developments then, as these two have been picked up over the course of this series and the World Series for that matter, as the new developing drivers for the Maloir Racing team. So it's going to be interesting to see how they develop, how they grow under the stewardship of drivers like Labey, like Forrest, like Martel, so on and so forth. At the end of this session, then Dylan Vekere, third, Byron Forrest, second, LeBay fastest in free practice. So coming up a moment from now is going to be the talks of qualifying here in Zandvoort. The 2:33s nearest to the line, that being Wishful Winnings across the line there from 5th. We'll check what his times entailed, but taking a look then as we start off the talks of qualifying. 30-minute qualifying session then here in Zandvoort. And a very quiet start to things from the grid. Didier Potvin looks to be the first on the gun here. Following out behind him, you can see the Jackal, and by looks of it, there was also that of, looking in here, that was Brandon Carr, yes, of Breaking Point Racing. So taking a look into those qualifying predictions now, albeit grain of salt here, because we are a little bit on the out-of-date side, given that these times were taken about 2 weeks ago when the round was originally scheduled to run. Nonetheless, still gives us the same result here. LeBay predicted at pole position, 142.950. George Todd second, Vincent Simard third, Clinton Bourne in fourth, and Cal Ford in fifth. Dylan Vekere in sixth, David Tanguay in seventh, Moby Phillips in 8th, Byron Forrest in 9th, and Wishful Winnings in the top 10. Now, certainly in the case for quite a few drivers, there has been a dramatic shift given the extra 2 weeks of available practice time. We've seen some significant leaps in development for the run-in towards today's qualifying session. So this ought to be very interesting to compare and contrast with where they were 2 weeks ago. A bit of a glance back into the past where plenty of drivers are and still are right now teething with issues on this track. We follow on board then with Didier Potvin in his continued efforts around the track at the moment. And he'll be our track guide here at the Circuit Zandvoort. Now, it's worth noting we are not on the post-2020 configuration that is possibly the more famous configuration of this track, which features even more pronounced banking, which has been one of the common attributes of this circuit, one of its defining traits. But there are still plenty of banked corners here in Zandvoort. That mystic energy of it didn't really go away. We are on the 1999 to 2019 configuration of the Circuit Zandvoort. Nonetheless, making our way out through the Arie Luijendijk box to turn 14. Down to the line, we follow on board then Didier Potvin, our first time of the session here in qualifying for round 8. And straight down into turn 1 after this relatively short back straight. It's a very short, snappy kind of track, roller coaster-like in nature in terms of both its verticality and its corner design. Sweeping in through Tarzan box to turn 1 in towards Gerlach box and Hugenholtz box turns 2 and 3. We get to see here this banked inside. And that's even more pronounced in its post-2020 configuration, up out of Hugenholtz in towards Hunterug. You're seeing the conditions, at least for today, are looking rather dark and gloomy. No imminent threat of rain at this time. Up round Slotmaker box at turn 6 through to turn 7 as we begin the run downhill. And trying to keep as much momentum as possible is going to be the MO of these cars today. In through to Masters box at turn 8. Heading up towards turn 9. Now, these two corners, turn 9 and turn 10, whilst current classifications have them unnamed, they previously went by the Renault and Vodafone corners. Down here through turn 10 at Vodafone, in towards this back straight now. This is a very short DRS straight in Formula 1 in the previous regulations wave. Not sure what it will be now. And the run in towards the Hans Ernst box, what previously went by the Audi S's. Down through to turn 12 we go then on the run up towards Kumo box, turn 13. Then to the Arie Luijendijk box. So Didier Potvin, a provisional flyer for this session. We'll see what the 35 ranks in though for qualifying today. From behind him, nearest driver to the line will be the 888 Brandon Carr of Breaking Point Racing. Across the line then, Potvin, 145.480. Coming to the line, the Aston Martin of Brandon Carr. Behind him, the Jackal. Carr goes fastest, then Jackal to the line, third fastest. From behind him, we see the approach there of yet another Aston Martin, Brad Peacock. Then from behind him, we see Andrew Veldkamp to the line. From behind him, Cedric Grenier-Massey goes fourth fastest. Behind him is Casey Malles of Team Raceline Sim, goes seventh fastest. Number 15 nearest, Curtis Bell-Bray, who's had, and has been quick to comment on this, quite a few performance problems on the run-in towards this session. The Chevrolet has been somewhat of a loose cannon for him. We'll see, though, for Curtis Bell-Bray. It is worth pointing out, I'm pretty certain this does represent a vehicle change. Now, my memory is a bit fuzzy in the last couple of weeks, but I do seem to remember Bell-Bray driving a Porsche. So, unless the Porsche's packed on a few pounds, I think this is definitely a change of vehicle we're looking at up through the run of things at Hugenholtz. Stinson across the line there, goes 10th. And in spite of the changes to BOP, that KTM is still going to struggle on today's grid. It's just not got the same kind of power down low that Aston Martin is bringing to the table, or that, for that matter, of Chevrolet. We see here Cal Ford now second in the session for the AMS, number 484 of Milk Crate Racing. Slots in between Breaking Point Racing and Malwar Racing Team's AM division in that top 3. Breaking Point Racing currently holding the majority stake of that top 5. 2 positions from both car and, as it would stand there, from the Jackal. You see Let's Race mate Cedric Grenier-Massey now 5th in the session. Now, of course, we've seen him before with BMW over on the World Series. It's going to be curious to see what he makes of it with the previous generation M4 and the one down in GT4. Now, it is worth pointing out in the real world, the later generation M4 did get a GT4 model and then later a GT4 Evo model. So he is working with 3 generation old machinery here compared to what he's normally used to up in GT3. In recent news then, he's been relegated from the top 5 of the recent introductions, as it happens there, of the Jackal. Now second fastest for Breaking Point Racing. It's a 1-2 between the 888 and the 999. Nearest to the line, the number 800. So we check here with Karina Stinson. Of course, the only outlier for the AMS is Fabian Yohure, taking that qualifying ban for round 8. It's going to be quite a culture shock here for Stinson after what was a steely performance in Bathurst with Aston Martin, coming back into GT4, hopping back into what is an already unorthodox machine such as the KTM has definitely proven to be a bit of a shock there for Stinson. It'll be curious to see now that she's been taken under the wing of the Malwar Racing Team, and that development will be shortly following, if I had to imagine, that next season's performance, especially with a change of vehicle. I'd say it's on pretty decent authority to see that Stinson could be quite a lot more competitive than she is at the moment. I think it's mostly the car at this point letting her down. We've seen that she's been able to produce consistent results with Aston Martin, a much more difficult machine for the GT3s, as we've already heard firsthand from drivers like Labay himself, who used the Aston for 4 seasons over on the NLRL Sunday League. It was a case of that car's very involving, and maybe that's the same case here for the KTM. I'm not quite sure. It's such a erroneous vehicle to GT4. There's very little data to actually go off of when it comes to discussing the crossbow. Now, GT2, you can get plenty of. It's quite a favourable car over there. Plenty of drivers we know of that are using the GT2 crossbow, but this is such a bizarre little machine. I mean, it's as odd as it looks. You see for Stinson at the moment, 11th in the session. Across the line a moment ago went the number 96, and in the case there of Casey Malles, 9th in the session for Team Raceline Sim. Number 15 across the line, Curtis Belbray. Across the line there, stays in 10th. So right now at the front of the field, it's car from Jackal, from Ford, from Potvin, from Peacock in the top 5. Encompassing there only 3 teams, Breaking Point Racing, Milk Crate Racing and Malwar Racing Team's AM division. And now it is more than certainly Breaking Point Racing with a majority stake here. 3 of the top 5 positions, courtesy of Car, Jackal and Peacock. Number 450, next across the line. In the case of Matthew Badensky, Chevrolet ranks in there 8th fastest, stays there for the time being. Now, just a little under 2 tenths away from Veldkamp in front, so he's just right on the trailing end there, that 4th row. Looking for a chance of a 3rd row start. He'll need about 4 tenths of a second on his teammate, Cedric Grenier-Massey, to go up onto the 3rd row for 6th place. Right now in the AMS, we have 4 cars within a second front to back at the front of the field from Car down to Potvin. So it's still fairly close, but Car seems to have this one very well under control for Aston Martin and Breaking Point Racing. When you consider as well, strategically, they've got a 1-2 for the time being, with about 6 minutes before the end of their time in qualifying. Of course, to remind you, it's 15 minutes for the AMS, then 15 minutes for the pros. See the Jackal approaching the line. Now, taking a look back through the history of this series, the Jackal has collected on a race win before, as too has Brandon Carr. The most recent AM division win went over to Aiden Christie, who did it on debut with Audi at the circuit. Paul Ricard, sadly, not with us today for this grid. Meanwhile, taking a look back to round 7 from the pro side point of view, it gave David Tanguay his first victory of the season. Now adding to what is the third name of drivers in Season 3 to have taken race wins in the Pro category, outside of George Todd and the very obvious appearance there, 7 race wins in total this season for Christian Lebay. Down in the AMS, things have been far more diverse then. Andrew Veldkamp took a running hat-trick at the start of the season, then Cal Ford collected on there first, then Brandon Carr, then the Jackal, then back to Veldkamp, then to Peacock, then to Christie. As it would happen there, 6 unique names for the AMS, double what we have in the pros. That leaves this championship still very much undecided. 8 points at the forefront of action for the AM Championship standings. Still plenty to be discussed when it comes to who emerges as the AM champion in Season 3. For the pros, Lebay has to hold this by 36 points at the end of today's round to win the championship. And since he already has 38 points, things are looking very sweet indeed for the 119's chances of a hat-trick of championships here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup by Competizione Performance League. Your 2 key players, though, it's worth pointing this out. The Jackal on your screens at the moment, the 999 gold-clad Chevrolet of Breaking Point Racing, and that of Andrew Veldkamp, currently 7th. So there is the chances here, given their position on track and given what their performance could yield over the course of both 30-minute races coming up later on today, there is a very sizable chance the Jackal could lead the AM Championship for the run in towards the season finale in Bathurst next week. But of course, all of this is speculative until we really see pen meet paper. This is going to be very, very interesting to see how it all unfolds. We see now, just coming up on the last couple of minutes of the AM section of qualifying, we see for Cedric Grenier-Massey a recent advanced, as it would appear, to 4th place. Didier Potvin now 5th, Peacock 6th, Veldkamp in 7th, Badensky 8th, Miles 9th, Stinson 10th, and Belbray in 11th. We see from Stinson there across the line to stay 10th place for the time being. Meanwhile, checking in with the pros to see, with about 3 minutes before their time in qualifying, we see already 3 of them queuing on the exit, that being Lebay, Winnings, and Tanguay, as it would appear there. 2 Chevys and a Mercedes queuing on pit exit. Meanwhile, recent advances here for Brandon Carr. It certainly looks lively here in the case of the 888 could be on for yet another win this season. Just bringing back that graphic back up here. Carr's last victory came out of round 4 of the championship. This is going to be very, very curious to see what he can do today. Now, it's up in the air between him and the Jackal. Of course, teammates at Breaking Point Racing still looking to further their goals in the team's championship ahead of the Malwar Racing AM division. Will it be a case where they start to consider the driver's side or the team side of things? It's going to be a curious study of it all. We see one of the closest gaps emerging here in the trailing end of this qualifying session as Potvin to Ford by a factor of 0.06 of a second. We see then waiting on exit is still the same 3 drivers. The rest waiting in their designated pit slots. Of course, Yahure sitting this session out, qualifying ban for the number 28. Reluctantly so, as it certainly looked to be the case when Mercedes stood grounds to challenge for a top 5 in the AMS. We see with the others withdrawing to the pits, the Jackal is back in, so too is Cal Ford. It is looking a pretty clear shot of pole position for Aston Martin's Brandon Carr. The 888 for Breaking Point Racing looks to have this one nipped in the bud. Still 4 drivers within a second of each other front to back among that top 4. You see for Didier Potvin, still 600ths to conquer. Wish for Winnings in chat saying turn signals or no turn signals. I mean, I have to question in a response to what? In general, yes, always use your turn signals. That's a very important bit of the car. Down to the line then. Speaking of car, this is Brandon Carr to the line. Didier Potvin goes second fastest behind the Aston Martin of Brandon Carr. So Aston Martin hold on to an AM Division 1-2. Use of them on the track. I think it's a it's a bit of a curious case because we see drivers interpret it in different ways. When you, say, for example, hold the right side indicator and there's a car coming up on you're behind there under blue flags, they're going to read it in one of two ways. Either you're shifting over to the right or you're signaling to come through on the right. It can be read in one of two ways. And I think it's always a good thing to have. I think the greater majority see it as the first method of that, where it's okay, he's going over to that side of the track. I think that makes a lot more sense. So leaving the pit lane, away from the conversation about turn signals, on towards the pro qualifying session now to bring back up the qualifying predictions, as it does pertain to a lot more of the pro side of the grid than it does the AMs, though not to take away from the presence there of times from drivers like Ford, as well as looking there. Actually, yes, that would be the only time that currently stood amongst the top 10s in those previous predictions. But now I definitely say to have a gander here for Jackal, Potvin and Carr to be amongst those top 10 in this qualifying session. So taking a look again back onto it, LeBay, Todd, Simard and Bourne, that predicted top 4 here. That's going to prove to be a very curious case, as it would stand then, all 4 present. We'll see what they can make of it today then. On board then with Christian LeBay. We'll go to catch on board here to also see from Wishful Winnings. It's a very vibrant start here for the Mercedes. Trying to muscle past the Chevrolet at the forefront of action today. We see a very enthusiastic approach to things for Winnings. Both of them trying to put heat in the tyres. We'll see though, is there going to be any room given, or is it going to be quite an elbows out run in towards qualifying today? We'll see from these two. Chasing each other then, and they appear to be communicating in some crass form of Morse code using the tail lights and the headlights, which confuses me even further because I'm pretty certain the majority of these drivers are in some kind of voice call. Regardless then, down towards the line, getting on board with the 119 proper, on with LeBay for the start of the first pro flying lap of quali. We see then conditions still very much so looking gloomy. Now checking whether radar doesn't currently reveal anything in the way of wet racing, but I wouldn't rule it out with just how heavy the sky hangs in front of these drivers. I'd certainly say it's looking like it could certainly rain. Nothing stands there to prove otherwise as of right now. 12.5 minutes then left to go in qualifying. On board with LeBay as he makes his way down through to turn 7. You can really get a scope of just how much of a juggernaut that Chevrolet is, even in spite of changes under BOP. There's so much weight carried into these corners. It's got this very almost flowing feel to it. And a soundtrack all too familiar to fans of this series, the 6.2 litre LT1. Naturally aspirated Chevrolet-sourced V8 engine. Actually from the Camaro SS, not from the ZL1, despite the appearance of this otherwise suggesting to you that that would have been the LT4 engine, which was the supercharged model. Boy, would have I wished there to be a supercharger on this car, but SRO regulations strictly forbid the use of superchargers, so one can only wonder. Down to the line then goes LeBay. The first of our flying laps for today. From behind him, Wishful Winnings from the pro category. 1:43.302. Then Winnings goes third fastest. From behind them, we see the approach there to the line of George Todd. Goes second fastest. Then from behind him, David Tanguay. Then from behind him, approaching the line just a moment ago there, was the number 120 of Vincent Simard. Byron Forrest across the line with Dylan Vekere in pursuit. Byron Forrest currently third. Vekere across the line. No time set for him there. There was a time set for Carl Martel. In the number 99, goes seventh fastest. Nearest to the line, number 6. Here comes Clinton Bourne of Milk Crate Racing. You already saw what was some great hustle there from his teammate Cal Ford down in the AM category, division 4th at the end of their chunk of qualifying. Now we see what the number 6 can make of it, 4th in the pros. So mirroring the same attributes there of his teammate. Consistent top 5 placing there for both Ford and Bourne. Nearest to the line, number 91. We'll go to catch on board then. Ivan Sanchez of Holkianos Motorsport. In the case of Holkianos, they've been clearing house over on the World Series. There's recently a win for Sanchez's teammate Belder over in Bathurst. It was a brilliant, brilliant drive for them last weekend just gone. Down across the line then, in towards turn 1. Ivan Sanchez, 12th fastest overall in the session. In terms of the pro rankings, that currently slots him into the ballpark there of 8th place by technicality. Nearest the line, the number 119, Christian LeBay. 143.302 to beat. Down to the line from behind him, Wishful Winnings. Can he find an extension into a 142? Not on this lap just gone. We see Winnings across the line from 7th and appears to stay there for the time being. Number 12 across the line, George Todd stays in 2nd. Then from behind, approaching the line there now, Vincent Simard goes 2nd fastest. Byron Forrest across the line to go 3rd. Dylan Vekere from behind him to set a time onto the charts here, number 161. But as of yet, unclassified as he crosses the line. Number 99 and number 42 across the line a moment ago. And we see there for Adam Jeffrey, one of the recent signings for the Malwar Racing team alongside Karina Stinson. Now finds his way amongst the top 10, 8th fastest for Aston Martin. Still, though, clear house for Chevrolet. 1, 2, 3 for LeBay, Simard and Forrest. An all too familiar sight to fans of this series. As it would happen, much closer margins than we were previously expecting. 3 drivers then within 3/10 of a second, front to back on the podium. From the 119, the 120 and the 824. We see in the case here, both the number 12 and the number 824 making their way back out onto the track. Goes George Todd and Byron Forrest. Number 91 nearest to the line. We go to catch on board with Ivan Sanchez. Sanchez from 14th stays there reluctantly so. We've seen it's a far cry of things we've seen from the Holkianos team over on the World Series. It seems the Mercedes being the choice of vehicle this time around has come back to bite them. Number 119 nearest to the line. Here comes LeBay. 143.302. Still the time to beat, and I have pretty solid confidence to assume that he can break into a low 143, perhaps even a 142.9. You see back into the pit lane, 143.302 by Christian LeBay. Number 119, still fastest amongst the sessions so far. Simard in 2nd and Forrest in 3rd. We've just seen in chat there, V Sparko and E39 Kai. Good evening to you as well. Or technically good morning to one of you, as I know one of you tuning in from the UK. How are you? Doing all right. Doing all right. Thank you for asking. And thank you very much to E39 Kai for subscribing with Prime. They've done so for 8 months. 7.5 minutes then left to go here in qualifying for Season 3, Round 8 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Heading in towards the run of things here at the Kumo box, in towards Arie Luijendijk at turn 14. A real blast from the past there in the Twitch chat. Plenty of drivers that used to be around from the TRR era joining us from the Twitch chat here. For those of you maybe new to this series, what you're tuning in at the moment to, the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series has been running now for its 3rd season, with the 4th season coming up around the corner later this year. I would certainly say it's one of the gold standards for GT4 racing, and we've been covering it every step of the way here on TRTN for the last couple of seasons. 6.5 minutes left to go then here in Zandvoort qualifying. Now, to remind you of the regulations, and we'll bring this back up over the course of the grid read just a little later on, is going to be the case where we're facing down against 2 30-minute races end on end. So this qualifying session plays doubly into the stakes for today, as it's going to decide both grids for these drivers. In the past, it would have been a case where they sort of revolve the shorter qualifying sessions against 30-minute races, giving us 2 distinctive grids, but these will both play off of what we have in today's results. And that's going to play heavy detriment against Fabian Yahure with that qualifying penalty. LeBay then still fastest, Simard in 2nd, Forrest in 3rd. It's still a confident Malwar Racing 1, 2, 3 and 4. We get to see as well, in the case of some drivers on today's grid now, namely the case of the LRM drivers, the Let's Race Mate team. We've seen them over on the World Series by Competizione Performance League, and it's a case where both for Grenier Massey and Badensky, they make their GT4 debuts here in this series. So it's definitely a baptism by fire from down in the AM category. 5 minutes left to go in the session. Still, as of yet, no new times, and we see even further confounded issues at Arie Luyendyk box for George Todd. Number 91 nearest to the line. And number 120 following in his trail. So down to the line goes Simard. Still 129 thousandths there from the fastest time. So it is still razor thin to be had. And I'd say it's on pretty solid ground to assume here that it's going to be a very close start to the race if pace has been anything to go by here. Number 42 nearest the line, Adam Jeffrey from 9th. Very close margins, it's worth pointing out there, between these three drivers, 7th through to 9th, Tanguay Carr and Jeffrey, front to back there by 35 thousandths of a second. Nearest the line then is the 119. Now we've been waiting for quite a fair deal of this qualifying session here in the 15-minute bracket for the pro drivers to see, can he break into that 142.9 bracket? That's really what we're after from the 119. All the signs would point towards it, but let's see if pen meets paper in the case of Christian Lebay off the exit of the Arie Luyendyk box at turn 14, down to the line. And it did appear, at least on the track telemetry. No, we do get to see it there. I was about to say, it appeared on the track telemetry that he was invalid. That is anything but there. 143.032, stepping ever closer then, just shy of 4 tenths clear of Simard in second place. Number 161, nearest to the line. Here comes Dylan Vekre. Behind him, the 824 Chevrolet of Byron Forrest. 6th place at the moment for Vekre, and that's where it will stay. Forrest to the line, stays 3rd. Number 91, Ivan Sanchez off the exit of Arie Luyendyk box. Up from 15th there to 12th, so decent improvement. Rejoins with the bulk of the pro grid. Now there is still that exceptional time from Brandon Carr in the AM category to place himself 8th overall, the only AM driver left amongst the top 10 outright. 3 minutes left to go in the session. Nearest to the line, number 233, Wishful Winnings, leaps from 10th to 6th after that last lap just gone. Breaks into within a second of the fastest time, so very impressive stuff here for Mercedes. That's the second car to do so after George Todd. It's been a primarily Chevrolet-led grid here in Zandvoort with 2.5 minutes left to go before we get into the scope of racing. Things are still hotting up on this grid. Clinton Bourne, a driver predicted up and amongst that top 4. Right now, just 1 position away, still amongst the top 5. We'll see what he can make of it. Big step out for him, though, off the exit of turn 14 to the line. Bourne stays 5th for the time being. Now, as it stands, needs about, looking here, 110 thousandths. A 10th and a 100th, to be more specific there, off of Todd to make 4th place. 119 nearest. 143.032 to beat. Cross the line there. Stays that fastest time. Number 30, David Tanguay to the line. Stays in 8th place. Number 161 nearest, Vekere, 7th, now 6th, up and ahead of Winnings. Nearest the line, 233. So we'll be able to see then on the run in towards this last lap coming up. Not only is an immediate chance of rebuttal here from Wishful Winnings, but he still gets the opportunity to go out for one more lap before the end of qualifying today. Now, the gap between these two, doing the rough maths just quickly here, stacks in at about 62 thousandths of a second. So across the line goes Winnings. From 7th, still has one more shot. Now 7 cars, front to back, divided by less than a second. Number 42 nearest. Adam Jeffrey across the line stays 10th. From behind him, the number 12, George Todd, does make an improvement now to put himself within a 10th of Byron Forrest to 3rd, but stays in that 4th place spot. Born down across the line, stays 5th. 30 seconds left to go, so he's past the point of no return here. One more lap available to him. 119 nearest. Not yet beaten by the bell. LeBay to the line, 143, and now into the 142. It's 142, 875 from Christian LeBay for Malwar Racing Chevrolet. B Sparko in chat asking, is this full cross-play now? Sadly not, no. They never ended up updating ACC for full cross-platform compatibility. It's still just consoles only, so we have to give a quick sort of key here on this grid. Obviously the Xbox logos means Xbox, but the sort of globe logo there is just, I'm not sure what the exact reasons for, but it's a licensing thing, but that's supposed to be PlayStation. Nearest the line, number 42, Adam Jeffrey down at the Hans Ernst box. Otherwise, the Audi S's. From behind him, the number 12, George Todd, currently 4th in the session now. Still within a 10th of Forrest. Still within a chance of a podium start here, still on the 2nd row. But Jeffrey on the 5th row, still looking to emerge ahead of the leading AM car of Brandon Carr. The 888 Breaking Point Racing still holds ground off of him there. Across the line goes Adam Jeffrey from 10th at the end of this session. Meets the checkered flag and stays 10th. As for George Todd, up to a podium for the start of today's race. With the 824 back in the paddock, they're separate by 0.04 of a second at the end of this quali. Great hustle for George Todd of Malwar Racing up onto the podium. It's LeBay on pole for the pros, and it's Brandon Carr on pole for the AMs here in Zandvoort. Brilliant qualifying session then. And to remind you of the regulations at play for today, coming back into the conversation about regs, we have 2 races following off of this quali session, back-to-back 30 minutes, no mandatory pit stop on either of them for the run-in towards today's session. And so, as we wait for the grid to form up, and we'll get the grid read going for race 1 of 2 today. Only one article of news to discuss in terms of motorsports, and that's the rumours circulating Lewis Hamilton's retirement announcement, supposedly set to arrive at this year's British Grand Prix. Now, still massively up in the air. Personally speaking, it wouldn't come as too much of a surprise, given the way things have been going in the last couple of seasons, following what was obviously a massive decision to move away from Mercedes to Ferrari. That's still, I'd say, very much so up in the air over its efficacy, so take a lot of that with a grain of salt. Sadly, that's all for news at the moment, as things have simmered down between major rounds for the World Rally Championship and the British Touring Car Championship. And if you tuned in with us over the last couple of rounds of this series, we would have been able to speak more in depth about the upcoming Season 4 of the Pro-Am Cup America Series. As we just wait patiently now for the grid to form up. And so, getting onto the grid here for race 1 of round 8 of season 3 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Having a look then at the grid, this will pertain to both races, so it will be much the same when we get into the second grid of today, unless we are to experience any disconnects. That would be the only thing that keeps these drivers from retaining these positions on the race start. Just under 3 minutes then before the start of the formation lap. And it's Christian LeBay on pole position. The number 119 starts alongside the 120 of Vincent Simard. George Todd in third after a turnaround at the end of qualifying to put him onto the podium for the start of this race. He heads up the second row alongside Byron Forrest in fourth, with Bourne and Tanguay fifth and sixth. Dylan Vekere in 7th, with Wishful Winnings in 8th. Brandon Carr, the only AM driver to appear amongst the top 10, 9th, as it would happen, ahead of Adam Jeffrey, who rounds out the top 10. Carl Martel in 11th and Ivan Sanchez in 12th. It's Didier Potvin, I should say there, to make 13th place, with the Jackal in 14th, Cal Ford in 15th, and Cedric Grenier-Massey in 16th. It's Brad Peacock in 17th, and Andrew Veldkamp in 18th, Matthew Badensky in 19th on debut to the season. Same story there for Cedric Grenier-Massey, and Casey Miles rounds out the top 20. Karina Stinson in 21st, Curtis Belbray in 22nd, and after serving his qualifying ban, Fabian Yahure 23rd and last of this grid. With a minute and a half left to go then, speaking in discussions surrounding the overtaking opportunities here in Zandvoort. Of course, turn 1 is always a given, as with the majority of tracks we've covered here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, but also taking a look further to find that Hugenholtzbot presents opportunities, given a solid run from Gerlach-Bot, running down through to turn 7, 8 and 9 as it switches back in on itself, does present itself with the chances for drivers who really want to dig deep and try and go for the more daring line in this section to have a chance. And of course, it all depends upon the exit here, with GT4 being such a momentum-heavy sport, especially on a track like this. A lot of that middle sector is going to find itself very close in contention. Out through turn 10 to turn 11 and 12 is our next major overtaking opportunity as we get down onto the brakes on the run into the Hans-Ernst-Bocht, otherwise the Audi S's. And turn 13 is a very deceptive corner. We've noticed Kumo Bocht has caught plenty of drivers out, and that can facilitate for those with a little bit more aptitude to the corner a better chance to go side by side all the way down through the Aurelian-Dijk-Bocht and onto the opening straight. So with 30 seconds then given, we're on board with Labay for the start of the formation lap of race 1 of 2 today. We see then Labay starting from the inside line. Now, this can be somewhat of a double-edged sword for him, especially with a corner like Tarzan Box. Of course, it is banked, albeit not as much as the post-2020 configuration of Zandvoort, but it is still banked, and that can provide, given a good enough start here, still the opportunities for Simar to stay very, very close alongside for the run down through to turn 1 into that overtaking opportunity next thereafter into turns 2 and 3. So a Chevrolet 1-2 for the start of this, and for those perhaps new to the series, this is, I'd say, a little bit more tame for Chevrolet. Yes, they have been the dominant manufacturer of GT4 racing and an unmistakable presence of this series, but having a look earlier into the season would have revealed that Season 3 has seen multiple instances of a Chevrolet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lockout. So to see that vice grip on this series starting to slip just ever so slightly here is a curious telltale sign for the run to Season 4 in the next couple of months. Of course, taking a look back onto the calendar to see how far along the season we've come here, and on the run in towards the penultimate round, the stakes of the championship still reside on the shoulders here of Labay. Needs 36 points worth of a gap up over David Tanguay by the end of this round to secure the championship. Currently, that points gap is at 38. So it is very much on his side here to fight for the championship tonight here in Zandvoort. Meanwhile, down in the pros, it's 8 points between the leading pair at the moment, between Andrew Veldkamp and the Jackal. A curious case there. Two Chevys at war for the lead of the championship. Much has been the case as well for the pros. Waiting then for the grid to form up out through the Hans-Ernst-Bocht. Now, a reminder of the BOP at play for today. This really does pertain to only a few manufacturers in conversation, specifically Chevrolet, Mercedes and Aston Martin, though there is, by looking at the grid right now, that little sprinkling of KTM in there, courtesy of the number 800. Mercedes are on the back foot, Chevrolet certainly not. As for Aston Martin, somewhere caught in the middle. It's going to make for quite an interesting experience here on the run in towards race 1 of 2. 30 minutes of racing to follow here in race 1. To begin the formation process down towards the line then, 23 cars in all, 12 on one side, 11 on the other for the run down to the line here. Season 3, Round 8, Race 1 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. And live exclusively on TRTM, we are Green and Racing here in Zandvoort. Right off the bat, a great start from the 119 of Christian Lebay, the number 120, looking to give challenge, but it's the number 12 to get up alongside him in towards turn 1. A brilliant start then by George Todd. Out through the Tarzan box, we can see the car spreading out. The number 12 now taking up the helm of second place. Meanwhile, we see conflict there in the background. David Tangway and Byron Forrest neck and neck for the run through turn 2 in towards turn 3. We see spilling up over the curbs was a bit of trouble, and we also see the yellow flags out in the background. The 616 and the 42 collected among the fray there. Adam Jeffrey in the wall, and the 616, that's Andrew Veldkamp in serious trouble as well. Making their way down through to turn 2, now to turn 3. A very, very rough start for the AMs, but a delightful start for the pros. Back into green flag conditions as we exit Hunsrück, but we can see all is not well there for that of Adam Jeffrey. We also see one of the more recent casualties has been that of the 484, which is now back into the pit lane. That being Cal Ford, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, is the case. We also see there in the background the number 800 KTM. That's Karina Stinson into the gravel off of turn 7. Riding the banking there to rejoin just in behind the number 42. You can see stricken with damage off of that very worrying start for him. Out through the Hans Ernst box then. Lebay leads ahead of Todd and Simard for the podium. We see behind them Byron Forrest holds that 4th place spot away from David Tangway. Dylan Vekere right behind them. Then following on with Clinton Bourne, wishful winning 7th and 8th. Carl Martel in 9th, and Brandon Carr heads up the field for the AMs, but leads from the back of the top 10. You can see as well, creeping closer back into the chances of a fight here. Vincent Simard is not letting this one go down easy on the inside off the exit of turn 1, side by side here for the run towards turn 2. This could get ugly between the pair. We see a little bit of a knock there between each other. Very nearly was it a case where if he had kept on with his current line, he would have swiped across the back end of George Todd and slammed him to the wall. Trying to get a look in here as we see further issues have arose surrounding the 484, who I'm told is now for the foreseeable future in the pit lane. The 42 has come in. That's Adam Jeffrey with Aston Martin. Following on board at the moment then with Vincent Simard in his continued efforts to fight from second place here. Third as it stands right now. Right behind him though is Byron Forrest, who is caught in a bit of a dilemma. Does he try to attack for second? Does he try to prioritise defence for third? He is caught between a rock and a hard place. I'd technically say by proximity all three of these drivers are fighting for the same position on track here. Second, right behind them, we can see being pursued for fifth I should say there for David Tangway is Dylan Vekere, pursuing him from 6th. Watching on the overall standings to see that amidst the chaos of the opening couple of laps here, Fabian Yahure now takes up the helm of a top 5 position in category, 15th overall on this grid, with even further upward momentum expected from the Venezuelan talent, the number 28, currently right on the trails of Peacock, who is in turn on the trails of Badensky, who is in turn on the trails of Grenier Massey in a 4-car train. We see from behind, emerging back to the field, was Didier Potvin, as it would appear there, being swallowed up by the rest of the pack in Pro. Vincent Simard continues to hold ground here off of Byron Forrest, but still looking to claw back at an opportunity away from George Todd, who has had a brilliant start, all things considered, in the opening 5 minutes of race 1. Up through Hunsrück, in towards the Slotmaker box at turn 6. Up over the crest, in towards turn 7. We begin the run downhill here from the top 5, and we see just how much momentum that Todd is willing to carry. Chevrolet still close at hand. It's really a story of 2 manufacturers amongst that top 10. In greater context here, it's Mercedes versus Chevrolet. Such has been the case throughout the season. You can see it's only until you get down towards 10th place here, where you find a manufacturer that doesn't fall into either two parties. It's Aston Martin, courtesy of the leading AM driver Brandon Carr, looking for his first victory in nearly half a season. We see in front of him, though, recently stricken with damage as well, is Clinton Bourne. Now having fallen down to 9th place, more troubles beset the number 6 here in race 1 of 2. Looking back in then to see the ongoing fighting from the point of view here of Fabian Yahoure, as he looks to try and size his chances up over Matthew Badensky. It's worth considering here in the case of the 450 and then up in front of him the 626. Both of these drivers making their GT4 debut tonight. So again, as we mentioned before, it's a baptism by fire for Badensky and Grenier-Massey. Yahoure on their trails, Peacock right behind as well, so it's a very close stead here in the top 5. We see snaking out to the side, very quick reaction timings there from Fabian Yahoure to put himself side by side with Matthew Badensky. In towards turn 1, more ambitious onto the brakes, but can he hold it there? The 450 looked at the chances to try and go for a switchback, but didn't have the rotation in its back pocket to make that possible. Up through to turn 2, now to turn 3. Yahoure now up and ahead of Badensky, sets his sights then upon Cedric Grenier-Massey. That's Division 2nd he's looking there on with. And he has made very, very quick progress. The question therein remains, though, for race 2. Of course, this is race 1 of 2 today. That second race, can he replicate the magic we've seen in the first 7 minutes, or is he going to need to dig a lot deeper than we already have seen from the number 28? All questions hopefully to be answered in time. We see here for Byron Forrest and Vincent Simard what is quickly becoming a fight amongst themselves on that second row as George Todd continues to pick up more and more steam. From behind them, Tanguay versus Vecchiere, the third row still occupied with fighting of their own here. The number 30 Chevrolet versus the number 161 Mercedes, barreling down through turns 11 and 12. From behind them, Wishful Winnings and Carl Martel take up the next helm of fighting. The fourth row, albeit not as close as the third, still find themselves contending for position. And then behind them on the fifth row, it's much closer between the wounded number 6 of Clinton Bourne and the ever so slightly wounded 888 of Brandon Carr. See in the background there, the exchange of 2 positions between these two, Adam Jeffrey and Didier Potvin, both Aston Martin stricken at the start of this race. Big trouble for them in those opening couple of laps. They swap positions for the run in towards turn 1. Now getting a look back up through the order to see that Vecchiere has now gotten up and ahead of Tanguay in the conversation of that fight for the top 5. So getting a look in with them to now find Tanguay on the back foot. Now, it's worth considering every position lost is more benefit given over to Christian Lebay. There is the chances in tonight's doubleheader that Lebay will take home the championship before we get to Bathurst next week. As we continue to watch on board then with David Tanguay, his fight for 5th place now flipped on its head from defense to offense. Out through Vodafone. Up in front, you can see off in the distance there as they mount the crest for the run into turn 11. It's the fight between Forrest, Simard and Todd for the podium. We'll catch on with these two a little later on, taking a look then back onto the wider screens to see the still ongoing fighting. We see here for Carr v Bourne for 9th and also Martel v Winnings for 7th place. Looking outside then of the top 10 to see Cedric Grenier-Massey in the time since has now been intercepted by Fabian Yahoure, who has been on the warpath since the race started to put himself back on the AM podium. And I'd say right now, with the pace in mind, he's certainly got the chances to hunt down the 888, currently leading the division down through to this next lap just gone. The 484 has a drive-through for speeding in the pit lane, so things have gone from bad to worse here in the case of Cal Ford in the first of 2 races at round 8. Right now is a case where he's just going to have to soldier on through. It wasn't the start that he wanted, but it's the start he'll have to live with here in the first 10 minutes of racing. 20 minutes left to go here in Zandvoort. Still plenty of drivers reeling away from that opening lap incident that caught so many of the AMs out in the trailing end of that larger pack. Martel v Winnings picking up out through Slogmaker, blocked in towards turn 7 as we descend downhill. In through Renault corner, up towards Vodafone here at turns 9 and 10. Still in pursuits then. Martel just slowly but surely sizing up that of Wishful Winnings, waiting for one lapse in judgment, and he's going to pounce at the opportunity. Of course, Martel returning to the series here in Season 3 after a bit of a hiatus. Has not dulled the blade since. Still very much so capable of great things in these fights. Now we get to see a rather interesting turn of events here. It's getting squeezed ever closer. You can see it in behind Sanchez. Then about 1 or 2 car lengths behind him, there is Fabian Yahure. Recent troubles for Brad Peacock, though. Sees him drop even closer to the back end there of Matthew Badensky, who now has the inside line on him. But the question is, can he carry the momentum through Aurelian Dyke? The Aston Martin has the better line, so clearly not for the time being. But in the straights here, this is where the Chevrolet will pick right back up where it left off. Into the pit lane goes the number 484 to serve that drive-through penalty. His teammate, the number 6, really has his hands full now, still nursing front-end damage, with Brandon Carr nipping at his heels. Now you can make the argument this doesn't have much of an impact on his positioning, seeing he's a pro and the one behind him is in the AMS. Whether he's in front or behind makes no difference. Well, have a look right behind him to see Ivan Sanchez, another pro driver here, 11th, looking at sizing up a position of his very own off of both Carr and Bourne in front. Looking back up to the front end of the field to see there is still that spread of fighting between Simard and Todd. Byron Forrest much as part of that fray now as well. And taking a look on board with the 120, if we can catch on with him at this time. Scrolling through to find him as part of this 3-car battle for second. On board then once again with Vincent Simard in the fight for second place. With the 484 back into the pit lane, we're getting closer now to the halfway mark of the session. About just under 3 minutes left to go before we're in halfway to race 1 of 2. You see those struggling off the exit of the Hugenholz spot to turn 3 up through to Hunsrug, now through Slotmaker box after turns 5 and 6. Getting the better run away then, George Todd. 0.6 of a second up the road, so it now does shift things here for Vincent Simard away from attacking. He might have to start considering options for defense here, because whilst he's been losing ground off to Todd, Forrest has been gaining ground to him. Looking in to see then from that of the 824's point of view, looking in behind to see Byron Forrest at the trailing end of this 3-car pack. Out through the run of things here at the Audi S's, otherwise the Hans Ernst spot. You see in the background, this is the fight that's been still going on for 7th place. Winnings versus Martel. 233 versus 99. You see then with a bit of an awkward run of things in towards the Aurelian Dyke box. This could open the doors up for Martel's move to 7. We can see immediately covering off the inside for the run up towards turn 1. Wishful Winnings now side by side. Karl Martel creeping up from the outside. He has the chances here. He's going to have to be brave about it. In towards turn 1. Very late for him onto the brakes. Stuck to the outside. So good defense there by the Mercedes. Area denial at the forefront of his priorities. In towards turn 2. Now through to turn 3. They're back onto the racing line. We see, though, again running wide. Something awry then with the Mercedes and the way that it's been set up for the 233 of Wishful Winnings. Up over Hunsrug into turn 5. Through to turn 6, now up towards turn 7 on the run downhill into sector 2 proper. Little touch there onto the gravel. This could open the doors up even further in towards Masters Box. Turn A on the inside. This could end ugly for these two if they try and carry it all the way through in towards Renault corner. Going way late onto the brakes. Goes Wishful Winnings to try and hold his ground. So nearly out off of the white lines there in towards Vodafone. Running wide out again. Martel just kept things nice and calm. Now puts himself side by side. But here's the kicker. He's on the outside for the run in towards the Hans Ernst Box. So the Mercedes really can park the bus here on the apex. The question is he capable of it? Down through to turn 11. If he can hold his ground here, he's got the inside into turn 12. That which we see there for the number 99. Still side by side though. Great stuff so far for the fight of 7th between these two. Up towards Kumo. Still side by side at turn 13. Very easy though, as we see there, just to run over a little too wide and catch some of the gravel. That'll drag you in if you let it. Up through to turn 14, falls back into single file. What an exchange though between these two over the course of lap 8. Past the halfway mark in this race. We'll continue to follow on board with fighting from these two as fighting for the podium starts to simmer down. It's Labay from Todd, Simard, Forrest and Vekere in the top 5. Tanguay, Winnings and Martel, as well as Bourne and Sanchez to the top 10. Leading the AMs right now is Brandon Carr, but it is worth pointing out less than a second and a half between himself and Fabian Yahure, especially so considering Yahure started from the back after his qualifying ban for round 8. Rene Masse in 13th, Peacock 14th, Podensky 15th, Velkamp 16th, Jackal 17th, Mals 18th, Belbray 19th, and Stinson in 20th, Jeffrey in 21st, Potvin in 22nd, Cal Ford in 23rd. Back on board then with these two, one of the closest fights of today's grid. Here in race 1 of 2. Again, when we look back to that last lap, this was an area where Winnings was having quite a few shortcomings there with Mercedes. He's been able to tidy things up for the run into lap 9. Up towards turn 11 and turn 12. We noted it earlier on today in the coverage of the GT Manufacturers Cup. The Mercedes cars do have a few issues under braking. Albeit the GT2, far more issues than the GT4. Up and around the Ariluyan Dipot. Very far off to the left there. Scrubbing a little bit of that momentum necessary, and it can't escape yet. The Chevrolet down the opening straight. Still in the slipstream, but not close enough for anything too drastic. We see, though, still going late for the brakes. Martel ultimately running out of room. Forced to run things wide, otherwise would have been a collision. Through turn 2 and towards turn 3. We'll catch on with these two in a moment's time. Taking a look back around the field to see here Veldkamp and Jackal fighting. Now, these are your two front runners of the AM Championship. Looking at where they are on the actual standing of things here, they find themselves way in behind from the lead. We see Jackal go for the inside here off of Veldkamp. Both of them nursing front end damage for the Chevrolets. Up through turn 1. Great move then by Jackal. What's the rebuttal though from the 616? He's got the inside to turn 2. Round the outside then for the run up in towards turn 3. Nearly out wide for him. We saw the back end start to fidget away from him on the run in towards the Hugenholt spot. Now exiting it up towards Hunter. A great take back of position there by Veldkamp, but I'd say we're far from done. Currently then holding the grounds for Division 6th amongst the AM category drivers. Very close exchange then between two leaders of the AM Championship. 8 points apart from one another between the 616 and the 999. Meanwhile, I've just got wind there of a yellow flag. It is, as it would appear, yes, the 233. Getting a look in here, Wishful Winnings. Serious front end damage. There's been quite a serious incident for him there. Down through turn 10. It's contact though between himself. And as it happens there, that's the leader of the AMs. Fortunately, wasn't enough to turn the Aston around. But that looks like possibly race-ending damage for Wishful Winnings, given the amount of time left on this grid. He's going to be quite a significant chunk down before the checkered flag. 10 minutes left to go. Surely that's going to be him into the pits. And there we see diving for the pit lane. Wishful Winnings, a very bitter end then to his race 1 endeavours as he falls out of the top 10. Simard still in pursuit then of Todd, and things seem to have reignited for talks of that second place fight, albeit in the absence of Byron Forrest, who now falls 1.7 seconds below the belt. Tanguay pursuing Vekere for a top 5, still in conversation as we approach the last 10 minutes of racing. We saw quite a considerable chunk of grass there kicked up into the air. Likely from these cars in front, the 120, the 824 and the 161. And actually, as we see it there, Vekere had, by looks of things, a little spot of... was that a little spot of bother for him? I don't believe so. Number 30 still in pursuit. It was Todd. It was actually, no, it was a completely different Mercedes. I'm not sure where on earth that came from, but yes, it was George Todd that ran over the grass. Just a brief investigation there. Number 12 now having fallen down to P3. That brings Simard back up to second place where he started the race from as part of that Chevrolet 1-2. Winnings still in the pit lane. No current word on if he'll be seeing the checkered flag or if this could be the end of the road for him in race 1. Of course, there is still the silver lining of there being a race 2 for these drivers to come into later on in the session. Something that I do find to be quite admirable here is just how long he's been able to stick things out. This is Clinton Bourne in the number 6. You can see the front bumper hanging low. There's this considerable gap there between the bonnet and the front bumper where the whole front end has been squished in after that huge fray of lap 1 incidents. He is not willing to roll over and let these positions get him by. He's going to try and defend for every fibre of his being here. 8th place away from Ivan Sanchez behind. We'll see how long that machine can last, though, being the real question. The recent dismays of the number 12 being forced down to 3rd. This has now brought things a little bit livelier into the conversation for that fight of 2nd, with Simard now defending once again for I believe the first time there since the race start. Todd now in 3rd and Forrest brought back into the fray by proxy in 4th. In terms of the nearest fight available, Mals versus Veldkamp has continued struggles for the 616 after his loss of position once again to the Jackal after what was a brilliant exchange between these two. Now finds him facing both barrels of Aston Martin, courtesy of the 96 of Mals of Team Raceline Sim. Up through the exit of the Hugenholzbocht, up through to Hunsrück. Aston Martin in pursuit. Getting a look back up through the order, we see there was, by looks of things, some recent troubles here for Simard. Just as we caught on with him, you can see, as the camera pans across, yes, there is damage, albeit fairly skin deep damage for the Chevrolet. It would indicate to us, though, especially given how close now all 3 of these drivers are to each other and how much wider the gap has become to the race leader, being the 119 of Christian Labay. There was some variety of incident between Simard and Todd. Forrest being brought ever closer in. Labay ever more distant now to this battle for 2nd. You see from Veldkamp's point of view, still facing off against Mals. We'll catch on with him a little later on. We see from Martel up and ahead of Winnings. And of course, with Winnings now a lap down, not a great deal he can do after damages, but it is good to see him back out on the track. We see here from Forrest in the trailing end of this fight for 2nd on the grid. Through to turn 8, now turns 9 and 10 up in front. He's got clear line of sight up towards 2nd place. Still no imminent threat of rain, so I think we are in the clear here, hopefully, for no more wet racing. Those who've joined us in the last couple of weeks would have seen this track absolutely drenched by wet weather. That was tough enough on the GT3s. I'd only begin to wonder what that's going to have an effect on the GT4s. We have in through to turn 11 and turn 12. It's worth keeping an eye there to Vekere and Tanguay as well from behind. They're still close by. And all meanwhile, whilst this fight has still been going on, there is still the one going on here between these 3. What was previously a 2-horse race for 8th place between Bourne and Sanchez. Carr is now in the mix as well at the forefront of the AMS. With Yahure still in pursuit. You can see him just off in the background there. Behind him, look to be the number 42 down in 21st, Adam Jeffrey. One of the early casualties of race 1. 5 minutes left to go then. Things starting to wrap up to a close in race 1 of 2. Then we get to do it all over again for another 30 minutes before we're finished with round 8, and could very well be finished with the talks of the Pro Championship standings. Number 6 runs out wide, of course. The elephant in the room being that excessive front end damage. Now, we have no idea how far down the rabbit hole this goes. Is there damage to the suspension? Is there damage to the steering? Or is it just damage to the front aero? Already reducing its capability beyond what it already was for the setup today. Out through turn 4. Bourne still holds strong away from both Aston Martin and Mercedes. Meanwhile, in the talks for that fight of P2, things are starting to simmer down between Simard, Todd and Forrest. Growing ever more distant lap on lap, 4 minutes left to go. In the case of the 119, just rounding turn 13 in towards turn 14. In the ballpark here, about 3, maybe 4 more laps before the race is out. We get to do this all over again. George Todd still sizing up a chance here. He's in the slipstream, so definitely within a shot to come back into this fight for second place. But it's going to need some kind of mistake from up in front, because Simard absolutely tunneled in now on his chances to return to that second place. We see, though, skipping up over the curbs in through turn 2, now to turn 3. Up over the crest then into Hunsrück. This is where the Mercedes gets to come into its own, ascending the hill there. It's going to have the advantage over the Chevrolet. And now as we get down to the run downhill, gravity to the aid of the Camaro. In the absence of any kind of turbochargers, it doesn't need much more help when it's got gravity on its side. In through to turn 8 we go. Leading ahead of the Mercedes. Getting a glance back into some other fights on the grid. Top 5 fights still going on here for Tanguay v Vekere. Then further down the line, Bourne v Sanchez still on the cards for 8th place. Down through to turn 7. Another fight going on at the same time of this was one that we discussed earlier on. Veldkamp v Mals on for 16th outright. You see that even in spite of the damages against his car, Bourne having the benefit of straight line speed over both Mercedes and Aston Martin is helping him in moments like this between turns 10 and 11, and then between turns 14 and 1. Is what's keeping him very much so in the fight here for 8th place, but it's getting closer and closer now. We're starting to see the crunch of this proverbial concertina effect out through to Arie Luyendyk block to turn 14. The 91, I'd say, is getting closer and closer and closer on his chances to just leap up into that lead of the fight for 8th. Meanwhile, we see here from Le Bay, there is the chances now. Yes, we are in the current bookings for 1 more lap before the end of this race, so we'll be ending after lap 17. Meanwhile, we see here closer than ever, Todd v Simard, 2nd place for grabs. 2 tenths at the last interval. You can see on your screens, though, that's much, much closer in perspective. In through to Renault corner, turn 9, now up towards turn 10 at Vodafone. There was a momentary white flag there for the 35. I believe that was just the case for Didier Potvin. He was shifting out of the way for advancing traffic. In the case of the 119, is only 2 corners away from starting that final lap. It's been the fight for P2 we focused on for some time, but taking a look in here, Vekere and Tanguay side by side into the Hans Ernst box, turns 11 and 12. The 30 up on the inside, then ahead of the 161. Tanguay's plotted that move out for some time there and sprung it onto the 161 to take the top 5, securing 4 of the 5 positions of that top 5 for Chevrolet, with only a single Mercedes still in the mix, that being George Todd. We see, though, in the case of Todd, still has his sights firmly set on a P2 in this race. He's had a great start to it, had a great exchange between himself and Simard, albeit there's been a few hiccups along the way. Things still looking to end grand here for Mercedes. Out through to turn 3, running wide there, the number 120 onto the grass, and it's contact between the pair of them down through to turn 3. Disaster on that last lap. Now, albeit not enough to take either of them out of the race, but it has taken them out of the fight for P2. We see there just running onto the grass. Once you're on the grass there, brake or not, you're a passenger. Down through turn 3 was quite a serious clatter along the side for that of the 120 has dropped Vincent Simard now in behind Dylan Vekere to outside of the top 5. So a disastrous end for his endeavours here in race 1 of 2 at Zandvoort for the 120 of Simard. For Labé, unchanged of course, and for Todd, a very wobbly Mercedes, but one that currently stands P2 with Byron Forrest in 3rd and David Tanguay 4th, Dylan Vekere in 5th. Meanwhile, for Brandon Carr, still leading in the AMs. We'll see it all down to the checkered flag in a moment's time here in race 1 of 2. Following with the 119 up through to turn 13 and turn 14. What has been a brilliant performance then to kick off the double header and the last double header of the season here at round 8, race 1. It's win number 8 for Christian Labé, down across the line to win in Zandvoort in the pro category in race 1. Brilliant stuff for the 119. Number 12, nursing what seems to be more than meets the eye on damages there. George Todd to the line for second place in the number 12. Byron Forrest for the podium. David Tanguay 4th. Dylan Vekere in 5th. Now getting a look in behind to see what is still ongoing to be the fight of having it stand here P8. But for Brandon Carr, regardless of if he's in front or behind Clinton Bourne, he is looking at his second victory in the AM category. With Bourne making his way out through the Ariluyan die box for 8th. Brandon Carr to 9th takes his second victory of the season in the AM category, breaking off what has been upwards of a 3 to 4 round win drought for the 888 Aston Martin. Great stuff for him. Sanchez and Tev Yahure on a world-class returning drive there. Qualifying ban to P2 in AM. Great stuff. Grenier Massey on debut to the podium here in GT4 AM. From behind him, Brad Peacock, Division 4th, Badensky, Division 5th, the Jackal for Division 6th. And we see there pirouetting around on the grass his wishful winnings. Division 7th for Andrew Velkamp, right behind him, Division 8th for Casey Malles, Curtis Bell Bray. As it would stand here. Looking at the scope of Division 9th with Karina Stinson, Division 10th. You see the full results up to the side of your screens just there with Belbray across the line. Your 2 division winners then in race 1 or 2. Christian Labé in pro, Brandon Carr in AM. Win number 8 for the 119 this season. Win number 2 for the 888. Great stuff then to bring us through that opening round. Or opening race, I should say, of round 8. As we take a look then back onto the session itinerary, away from race 1, race 2 coming up next around the corner. No mandatory pit stops in all, as we've seen from that first race, so keeping a close eye to that grid as it will form back up. Key players then away from race 1 here, Labé, Todd, Forrest, Tanguay and Vekere. Big trouble towards the end there for Vincent Simard. He may play things a little bit more hesitantly into race 2, especially regarding that first sector. Carr, brilliant result for him. Was able to fight amongst the land of the giants there in pro from the top 10. Was able to finish ahead of one, actually looking here, 3 pro cars, though, albeit in the case of 2, with Jeffrey and Winnings, serious damages throughout the early stages of the race. In the case of Winnings, it was a latter incident that brought him back into the pit lane. Wait for the grid to form up and be back to you in just a moment's time. As the grid forms up for race 2, much the same as what we saw on the original starting grid. So in the case here for that top 10, Labay, Simard, Todd, Forrest, Bourne, Tanguay, Vekere, Winnings, Carr and Jeffrey. Well, 2 minutes before the start of the formation lap, still no imminent threat of rain, so it's going to be dry throughout here, just a bit gloomy, just a bit overcast. In terms of temperature and track conditions, they're a little on the colder side, with 10 degrees ambient in terms of 10 Celsius, I should say. Certainly not 10 Fahrenheit. 10 Celsius on track temperature and in terms of ambient air, so nothing too detrimental on the drivers today, nothing too hot, nothing too cold, but I wouldn't necessarily call it the Goldilocks zone. So then, keeping an eye for the drivers who were early casualties, such as that of Adam Jeffrey. There's a huge crunch that prevailed over this middle of the AM pack. It's going to be very curious to watch then the progress once again of Fabian Hure after a brilliant turnaround in his results in the AM category today, turning what was a last place start in towards a division podium. It was a phenomenal drive there from the number 28 Mercedes, and we'll see if he can replicate some of that magic all over again. A minute left to go then before the start of the formation lap here on the second and final race of round 8 of this series before we head into the season finale next week at Bathurst. So waiting for the 30-second warning to go and catch on board then with Christian Labay for the second formation lap of today.
30 seconds.
On board then with the 119, already reveling in race win number 8 after the first of 2 races today. Labay continuing the charge forward. Now, it's worth bearing this in mind for him. He's getting ever closer to securing that championship away. Needs to end today's bout of racing 36 points in the clear. It's worth pointing out that before race 1 today, he was 38 points in the clear. So it's getting ever closer for him, and we'll wait for that final verdict to come through off of race 2. But you are looking at a potential 3-time consecutive champion. Continuing to powerhouse this series then. Labay on for a hat-trick. We'll see if he can secure it tonight or if anything dare stand in his way. Also keeping an eye there to the car in third place, George Todd, who had an exhilarating start in race 1. Put early challenge there onto the 120 of Vincent Simard, and that came to be one of the more entertaining drives of race 1 of 2 today. We'll see if they can do it all over again. Starting from the pit lane, as it appears there, recent reports for the 484 Chevrolet of Milk Crate Racing's Cal Ford will start from the paddock for race 2. Reasons as of yet undeclared. Down through turn 3 we go, then still watching with the 119. Behind him, Vincent Simard ended up finishing today's race a lot further down than he would have liked after that incident. And taking a look back into said incident, this was in the trailing end of race 1 between George Todd and Vincent Simard. Simard wide there from turn 2 into turn 3, was on the grass, nothing he could have done, brakes or otherwise, clatters the side of the number 12. That led to standing damage there for the number 12 into that last lap. He had to sort of limp it down to the line, but Todd ended up securing that P2 away from Simard. Simard ended up dropping from the top 5 because of that incident. Wasn't ideal at the end of race 1. That's something he'll be very quick to address then in his performance in race 2. We do note there just a few blips for connection issues. I believe that's for the number 28. Yes, that is the case there for Fabian Hure, so that might be something to keep an eye out for. There are apparent connection troubles. Now, that's been a wider server-side issue for the last couple of weeks, is what kept this round from running on schedule. We're actually 2 weeks over the margin for where this round should have been. We can't control when the servers have their issues, and seems to still be a universal case here for racing on ACC, at least on the side of consoles. Down through to the Hans Ernst box to turns 11 and 12. Distinctive rumble then of many V8 engines on this grid. Mercedes or otherwise Chevrolet engines. Rolling down towards the line then. V8 Thunder here for the second and last time of round 8. Down to the line then. 23 cars in all, 22 on the track. One from the pit lane here at round 8. Race 2 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Powered by Malwa Transport and a Sure Action Transport expert. Down to the line. One last go around here at the home of the Dutch Grand Prix. Without further ado then, we are Green and Racing here in the Netherlands for the last time today, and a great start we see already from the 119 to peel up and away from the 120 and the 12. Looking to run that same move down the inside at turn 1. The number 12 goes toe-to-toe with the number 120. And holding on to second place. Great start once again by George Todd, surfing that inside line away from Vincent Simard. We see in the background bit of door-to-door action between the 824 and the 30. Byron Forrest and David Tangway. We watch over the rear view here of Christian Labey as we exit through the Hugenholtz box, as we are still very close to one another there, front to back on the run, down through to the Slotmaker box, up over the crest and then down once again. Through to turn 7. Great start from the 119. Number 12 right behind. Number 120 behind him. So far, so good then. A far cry of the start we had over the course of race 1. Taking a look here, it's Labey from Todd, Simard, Forrest, Tangway alongside there, looking to go around the outside at Renault corner to try and plant himself for the inside at Vodafone. We watch here with David Tangway, still looking for it up the inside, just can't find the space for it. We see in the background, Martel trying his luck over Vekere. We see Winnings up and around the outside there, holding position away from Dylan Vekere. Behind him, Carl Martel. Rounding out the top 10, Brandon Carr. We see Adam Jeffrey right behind him there with Aston Martin. Behind him, Cedric Grenier-Massey opened his performance today to a podium as we see their trouble. Down through the Hans Ernst box, very late onto the brakes there. And that step out ultimately collecting that of Dylan Vekere. Carl Martel slots back in behind the Mercedes and right up over the nose of Brandon Carr's Aston Martin. Looking further up into that top 5, Tangway hasn't lost sight here of Forrest. Neither has Simard from Todd. Todd going twice in a row now for that same move down at turn 1. Such a clear line of sight for things. Banking on that brilliant start from the 119 2 times on the trot. That has really got to sting for Vincent Simard. Because what it's gone to show for him, at least in terms of that qualifying, is that P2 was meaningless up against Todd's P3. We saw a very similar strategy used, I believe, last season in Donington Park by, I believe it was Giovanni Battiali, as a matter of fact, in his drive with Chevrolet. Did a very similar thing, starting from 3rd, was able to get a very easy leg up into 2nd down at Redgate. Looking here then, 119 from number 12. It's Labey in the lead, Todd 2nd, Simard 3rd, Forrest in 4th. We see tucked in now to the back of the top 5 with Present Company right on his rear bumper. David Tangway in 5th, Clinton Bourne in 6th. Wish for Winnings from around the outside again here at Renault corner. Currently 7th, Dylan Vekere in 8th, Carl Martel in 9th. Rounding out the top 10 is Brandon Carr in the lead of the AM category once more. Adam Jeffrey in 11th with Cedric Grenier-Massey in division 2nd, currently 12th overall. Then from behind, Sanchez in 13th, Jackal 14th, Bedensky in 15th, Potvin 16th, Veldkamp, as it would happen there, about to lose ground to Peacock. 17th, currently the fight for it. He drops now to 18th. Peacock up to 17th. Miles 19th. Stinson 20th. Yahure 21st. Ford 22nd. Belbray in 23rd. Tangway starting to lose ground here to Forrest, I should say, with Bourne right behind him. Winnings still in pursuit. In terms of the gap between Todd and Simard, a consistent half-second over the course of this lap, so worth keeping an eye to it. In terms of closer gaps, we are seeing the emergence here of continued fighting just shy of the top 10. As it would appear, that's the 35 Didier Potvin pursuing Matthew Bedensky for control of Division 4th. Meanwhile, we see here for Adam Jeffrey just trying to shed his position from behind the AM driver to rejoin with the bulk of the pros up in front. We see very close action here for Vekere versus Winnings. Vekere moves up to 7. Winnings now 8th, tucked in behind him. And this could get very, very interesting to see. Let's go to catch on board with them. We do just note there for Curtis Belbray. Damage over the front nose, but nothing too severe. Looking in as well from Ivan Sanchez's point of view. He's got a clear line of sight on Potvin v Badensky for 4th in the AMS, but not his circus. You see for Yahure, now up and ahead of Stinson, looking to carve a line on through here. Mal's in his iron sights with Aston Martin and Team Raceline Sim. Up through Renault corner, up towards Vodafone. Right onto his rear bumper, now to his inside and covered off there by the Aston. Getting a look in here, what is soon to be brazen fighting amongst these two. Winnings versus Vekere. We saw just how quick to react he was once losing that position was certainly on the table. Up in front, Bourne v Tanguay still for the top 5. The opening 5 minutes, a fair deal cleaner than what we saw in race 1. As I say that though, we just got to see from Bourne. Huge plume of dust there kicked up into our eyes, and Winnings, not quite sure what he was doing there. I think just scrubbed onto the... that was near enough the dirtied line. There was a lot of marbling on the inside there, kicked up and away from the standard racing line. Curious case for the number 233, but we've seen his approaches to things have been anything but orthodox this season. You see for Yahure, sizing his chances on Mal's, beginning that procession through. Now he hasn't got anywhere near as much hand-holding this time around as he did in race 1 with that huge incident pertaining to the AM crowd. He is making quick work of things. We'll keep up to date with that as the session progresses. We see for Sanchez still watching in on the Badensky v Potvin fight, up around the Slotmaker box at turn 6, down through to turn 7. Running a little wide there is Badensky. It's a bit of a culture shock for him when you consider he and Cedric Grenier-Massey are tiptoeing into the world of GT4s for the first time. They're used to a lot more grip, where the Chevrolet is presently unable to give them. Not for nothing though, they have put on a very solid show of it. You see here from Sanchez, still glued to the rear bumper of Didier Potvin. We see from Vekere, having took the fight already up and ahead of Winnings, now sizes up his chances of a top 5 as he glues himself to the back end of a fight between Bourne and Tanguay. Now we saw that off in the distance when watching with Winnings not too long ago. Now it's very much a reality to this one here, the 161 of Dylan Vekere. Not long ago then did he move away from Aston Martin. We can see this is now an out-of-date graphic for him. And that move to Mercedes was a gamble absolutely worth taking. Looking to go and catch on board then with the man in the middle on board with the number 6 of Clinton Bourne. The Australian talent doing what he can here. He's caught between a rock and a hard place with Vekere right on his rear bumper and parked himself on the rear bumper on Tanguay. Out through turn 4. And had it not been for the weather radar, would have fooled me that we had the chances for rain. Weather radar still showing though the next 30 minutes rain free. Running out wide though, that step out has not done him many favours, and that could open doors up here for the car behind him. The 161 still in pursuit. Right now, Bourne really caught between two minds on this one. Does he defend for 6th place, or does he continue his efforts to try and push up for 5th? What's more viable? Right now, as it would appear, he is fighting to stay in 6th place on that 3rd row. When you consider, in the last race, he did all of that nursing front-end damage. It's factory new here for the number 6, down through to turns 11 and 12. And as David Tanguay continues to escape sight, we see that very much a fixture of his rear-view mirror right now is Dylan Vekere. Off the exit of the Arie Luyendyk box, turn 14, behind Wishful Winnings and Carl Martel, down in 8th and 9th. So catching on with the rest of the field here after nearly 10 minutes of racing at race 2 of round 8. We see one of the closest fights up the order is Simard v Todd. Once again, as it would happen between these two, off the exit of turn 3 up through to turn 4. Still squabbling for that second place spot, but it's LeBay that leads them both in towards turn 6, leading up and ahead of Todd and Simard. Then with Forrest in 4th, Tanguay 5th, Bourne in 6th, Vekere 7th, Winnings in 8th, Martel 9th, and Carr in the top 10 leading in the AM division. Jeffrey in 11th with Grenier Massey in 12th, Jackal 13th, Badensky in a close 14th, Potvin right behind their 15th place, and Peacock in 16th. Sanchez in 17th, Veldkamp in 18th, Yahore on his tail there from 19th on the field, and Ford rounds out the top 20. Mals in 21st, Stinson 22nd, and Belbray having a bit of bother there down at turn 3, 23rd. Looking back up towards that fight for second. This may be one we have to go and catch on board with the onboard cameras here to see the full extent of things for the 120 versus the number 12. A fight that has already carried over from race 1 today. Cutting away then from action on the number 6's point of view. Looking to catch in if we can here. We do just get to see side-by-side Potvin versus Badensky in towards the Hans spot. Does the 450 commit to a run on the inside? He gives space there, the 35. Behind him, the 27 looks to snatch up a chance for an extra position. We'll catch on with them a little later, trying to catch in to see what things are looking like from the point of view of the number 120, but be remiss to say that it is a bit of a struggle for some reason. Now we see here the 120. Right now, especially on the run in towards Sector 2 proper, they remain in somewhat of a stalemate. Few overtaking opportunities before we get to the run now in through turn 7, 8, and 9 as it continues to loop back in on itself. Chaining all three of these together, having a good run consistently across the board is opening doors up. But by how wide exactly? We see here for Vincent Simard out through turn 9. Turn 10 in sights here. He could look for a move on the inside, but it would be functionally suicide to do so from that distance. That's part of the distinct nature of the GT4, since they carry a lot less speed into these corners than the GT3s, but still possess a lot of the same braking systems. They can get stopped on a dime compared to GT3, meaning braking zones are far different by comparison. It's a case where a move on the inside, very easy to defend from the outside point of view. Simard still pursuing Todd, then looking further down the order to see continued fighting for Vekere v Bourne. Up at around turn 14. Further down the line, Winnings half a second from Martel as a new fight brews on 8th place. For Adam Jeffrey, he's losing sight there of Brandon Card, slowly but surely backing up into a 2-car fight for second in the AM division here. We see emerging between Cedric Grenier Massey and the Jackal. Another very close fight here we see amongst this storm of steel proceeding down towards turn 1. Led at the moment by Matthew Badensky. Behind him is Brad Peacock. Then we see Fabian Yahore leap up and ahead of Didier Potvin. We see for Potvin's case, he is still technically towards the inside line, but now swept in behind by the time we hit turn 2. Behind them, Cal Ford. In terms of progress for Yahore, starting 23rd, now 17th. Continuing the climb here, and as it would happen, in front of him represents a top 5 position just around the corner. His main target then is the number 27, Division 5th, Brad Peacock of Breaking Point Racing. Up in front, the Let's Race mate number 450 of Badensky by half a second. In towards turn 9, we see in the case here of Peacock, he is willing to get the elbows out on the approach towards the 450. The door was left open for him to try and slide on through, and we see from behind the number 28 very nearly collected his rear bumper after himself dipping 2 wheels on the grass. So very elbows out stuff here from Fabian Yahore. Keeps it absolutely pinned off the exit of turn 10 up towards turn 11. Now to the inside on Brad Peacock. Right behind him is Didier Potvin with Maloir Racing Aston Martin. Peacock holds his ground, having lost their position, I was about to say. But there we see Troubles emerge for Fabian Yahure, and in tandem to that was Troubles for Wishful Winnings, who is now out of this race. Confirmation from the pit lane, 2:33 out of round 8, race 2. We saw continued troubles there for Yahure. We do note their connection troubles for him also. Makes it a little more difficult for us to cover his racing. But we see here, down through to turn 1, more blipping there from the number 28. Does raise a bit of a concerning footnote. We also get word from a disconnect for Casey Malles. Now, we have noted server troubles in the past. It would certainly be a bit of a kick in the teeth now to see 2 weeks later from schedule these issues continuing to persist after thorough research.
We are halfway through. Keep it up.
I think at this point, if race control were to confront an issue like this again, it would just be a simple case. We've already done one race, of all the points off of that. But as we cross into the halfway mark of race 2, Vincent Simard firmly in pursuit here of second. Right back on to the number 12. We've seen then recent troubles for Fabian Yahure. Finds him down in 18th place. He's dropped ground from Veldkamp. We see swiftly trying to regain it in the case of their fight, but that top 5 claim for Yahure is starting to be scattered here. Back in towards fighting amongst these two. The 120 versus the number 12. We do have yellow flags out. It's for the number 15. So look at the catch on to see here. As the yellow flags reside, number 15 in trouble. Looking to see who that is. It's Curtis Bell Bray, but he is back up and running. So no further issues there. Out through Hunserug. Now to turn 5. Turn 6 just up and around it. At Slorkmaker Box. Up over the hill. In towards turn 7. These two have been a world of their own to study. Two drivers that are near enough two sides of the same coin, working in two fundamentally different machines. Really, all they've got in common there, besides the obvious, is engine platform and engine type. That's just about the cut of it. V8 engine mounted in the front. Everything else is foreign. You see in the case of the Chevrolet, still putting on ample challenge here to Mercedes, but it's been worth noting over the course, especially of Season 3, with performances like Todd's, that Mercedes has proven to be a capable heel here to Chevrolet's dominant performance. Now, they've yet to emerge themselves into championship leading form. There is certainly the chances for it. We did see a big jolt there in terms of lag stutter. Not 100% sure what on earth went on just there. It has created a bit of a jump by about a second in our timing equipment. Observing things from OBS's side of things, that was certainly quite an odd one. No dropped frames or anything, so that was all client side. Well, it wouldn't be an ACC race if the game wasn't actively trying to throw us out of it. Down through turn 3. 12 minutes left to go then here in Zandvoort. Cutting away from these two's endeavours, fighting as they continue to rage on. We see still emerging into the fray here, the fight for 6th, Bourne v Vekere. Then further down the order, Ford versus Peacock. This is currently, as it stands then, for the top 5. The last of those top 5 positions in the AM category, 14th outright. It was also very close, at least for a time there, fighting between these two, as you can see now for what the reasons are. Number 616, second race on the trot here with damages for Andrew Veldkamp. And this is sullying his efforts to try and stay in the lead of the AM Championship for the run in towards Bathurst. It will go down to the wire, so it appears, between himself and the Jackal, with the Jackal now into the lead of the AM Championship. It's worth noting that before today's rounds, they were 8 points apart. Becquerel in the last interval there was only 8 hundredths from Bourne. We see a difference in line off the exit of the Hans Ernstbach. Turn 12 in towards turn 13 at Kumo. Hooked for the inside there, but what he needs more so than anything is momentum. Off the exit of turn 14, clips the wall there for Dylan Becquerel. Close encounter with the tyre wall off the exit of the Ari Luyendijk bocht. Down through to turn 1. That doesn't appear to have done too much, if any, damage besides superficial damages to that Mercedes. Looking back in, Todd v Simard still finds itself in a frustrating stalemate between these two. Too close yet too far away for anything of note. We saw a bit of a touch there on the grass. Did force the 120 to pump the brakes more than he'd like to at turn 7. We saw very nearly off into the grass off the exit of turn 7 was that of George Todd. Action on this side of the race has been a little bit more on the tepid end compared to race 1, where the drivers were still finding their footing on this track. We do get to see, though, for all of its sum, for the sum of all parts here, the emergence of a fight between Badensky and Peacock. The number 27 now up into 5th in division. Badensky falls into 6th. Right behind him is Didier Potvin. Behind them, Fabian Yahure back on the climb. Of course, we saw there was a bit of a prang for him earlier in this race. Still rampant connection troubles there. Very difficult to make out exactly what's going on for the number 28 Mercedes. Oh, another huge lag spike there. This is definitely something we're going to have to start looking into. Now, I'm not 100% sure. Okay. This is, it is actually on the side of OBS, so we're going to have to investigate this one just as the session progresses here. You may have to bear with us just a moment. Not 100% sure what's going on there. That's a bit of a strange one. Okay, it seems the bulk of those issues are now behind us, and we're going to have to look into that one as the session continues. But 8 minutes left to go here in Zandvoort. Still watching in then for fighting between Bourne and Becquerel. Running out wide, though, the 161 off the exit of turn 9. Meanwhile, worth taking a look down here to see the Fabian Yahure quickly clears Badensky, now in pursuit of Potvin for 15th outright on this session. It has been quite a bit of a slump here for Badensky, and for that of, as you can see there, right behind him, Andrew Veldkamp. So clearly issues for the two Chevrolets at this time. Seven and a half minutes then. You see from the desync on that 28, it's impossible to figure out exactly how close he is at all times here. Didier Potvin not trying to get cannoned across the track by that desync, just holding the inside line, foot buried in the throttle now off the exit of turn 14, but it's too late to keep Yahure at bay, up and ahead of him into 15th place. Bourne v Becquerel starting to separate out here for 6th place. Bourne holding his ground on the 3rd row. 1.1 seconds in the last interval to Becquerel's 161. Up in front of him, worth noting there, was the collection of some dust up over the nose of the number 6. Now just glancing up the road here to see from the 824 and the 30. Neither of these two having lost significant chunks of time in that last sector. So I think it was just a bit of a graze on the grass in the case of Forrest and Tanguay. Didier Potvin still pursuing Fabian Yahure down through turn 7. Fighting starting to become a little bit more on the scattered end here. 2, maybe 3 fights here still worth consideration, but let's not rule out the possibility here, as we do get to see unexpected things will happen. Almost demonstrated right on cue off the exit of turn 14. .161 looking for the inside, can't find ground of it, so close to contact between the pair, down through turn 3. 5 minutes left to go here in Zandvoort before the end of round 8. In the case of LeBay, he's held off Tanguay long enough here to keep that gap past 36 points, so about 4.5 minutes coming up on here before his 3rd championship falls into his lap. Bourne throwing the kitchen sink now into this performance to try and keep 6th in his control, away from Dylan Vekere. Looking further down the lines to see that Yahure now breaking away from Didier Potvin for that 15th place fight. Veldkamp still in pursuit of Podensky, but nursing that front end damage to the end of today's race. It's going to stifle his opportunities in the long run. We see there, oh my goodness, just having a sip of the drink, but found out right off the exit of turn 12 there. A difference in line between the 6 and the 161 very nearly gave Vekere his premier chance to return to a top 3 row spot. Well, top 3 rows, yes, exactly. So down through the opening straight, just under 4 minutes. But on that opening straight, you could just see how much of a gap Chevrolets pull away from the Mercedes cars. There's really one outlying case, and that's been George Todd. He's been somewhat of a speed demon for Mercedes. We saw this as well demonstrated in GT3, where it's his reference time for Ferrari over in Monza that gives us the data to compare the 296 to its contemporaries. He did 174 miles an hour on the opening straight in Monza with Ferrari, so he knows how to set a car up for straight line speed. So that difference between himself and the Chevys somewhat negligible compared to the others. A wizard with the setups then, that number 12. We see for Vekere has done everything he can here to try and size up another chance over Clinton Bourne, but it's been a stonewall defensive 6th by the Australian talent. Still holding his ground. Following them down through to the Hans-Ernst spot. Behind them, Karl Martel. So it's worth noting, any more slip-ups, that's going to be to the direct benefit there of the number 99. These are among the last fights that exist on this track. So getting a look in, if we can here, with that number 6. Or more relevantly then, with the 161. Covering off the inside then, the number 6. As we draw ever closer to that last lap of racing. That comes up around the corner for the 119, currently on his way up through turn 6 on this track. Up through turn 6 now on the run down through turn 7. You can see the number 6 is starting to flag in those corners, bogging down over the nose. Whereas the Mercedes has a lot more grab in that sector. Down through turn 8, now up towards turn 9, trying to take the longer way in to try and give himself a much sharper run of turn 9 at Renault corner. Hammer down for Dylan Vekere. The Mercedes tries it may, struggling against the 6.2 litre under the bonnet of the Chevrolet in front. There is no replacement, as the saying goes, for displacement. And Chevrolet really do have them beat on today's grid. 4 litre twin turbo M178 AMG V8 engine versus the 6.2 litre Chevrolet LT1.
Leaders on final lap now.
As you heard it there, leader on the final lap, so we'll be going to catch on board with the 119 in a moment's time then. Glancing around the field to see continued fighting here. Veldkamp facing off against Sanchez for 18th overall on the grid. As for the 120, having lost sight then of George Todd, great scrap between the pair of them, but Todd appears to be gunning for yet another second place finish in this race. More solid points under his belt for the run in towards the last go of this season. As for the 119, just up through turn 6, we'll catch on with him in a little moment's time here. It's all or nothing in the case of Bourne v Vekere. These two have revelled in a fantastic fight across race 2. Looking further down the line, Potvin v Yahure, now a distant memory, is now past 0.8 of a second. Yahure continues from 15th on the track. Potvin tries he may, struggling to stay along with the 91 in pursuits onto the last lap. Here with Ivan Sanchez, right onto the rear bumper of Andrew Veldkamp. Down through to turn 1. As these two continue their fight down through to turn 10, the 161 still clinging on for dear life behind the number 6. We'll go to catch on board here down through turn 13, on with Christian LeBay as the checkered flag looms. Yellow flags do fly in sector 2 for Cal Ford, but as we approach the checkered flag here at the end of race 2, it's yet another win under the belt for Christian LeBay in the pro category. Race win number 9 for the 119 this season. Brilliant, brilliant stuff, and mirroring the same qualities of the last race. George Todd makes second place in the number 12 Mercedes. Vincent Simard to 3rd. Byron Forrest to 4th. David Tangray to 5th. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lockout for Maloir Racing up in the pro category. Clinton Bourne to the line there. Right behind him, Dylan Vekere. These two shared in a brilliant fight there, separated by just over half a second at the checkered flag. Carl Martel in 8th. And to the line there, we see the AM Division winner, 2 times on the trot then, to his 3rd win this season for Brandon Carr in the AAA Breaking Point Racing Aston Martin. Adam Jeffrey rounds out the top 10. A great turnaround from his fortunes in race 1. The Jackal for a podium, 2nd in division, and 2 podiums to boot then, back to back, from Cedric Grenier-Massey of Let's Race Mate in the 626 BMW. What a performance then on his debut to the series. Brad Peacock to the line for 4th. Fabian Yahure to a top 5 at the end of this race. Potvin 6th. Badensky 7th. Veldkamp in Division 8th. Stinson Division 9th. Ford, as it would happen there, a DNF. Belbray looking at a Division 11th, as it would happen, Division 12th for Casey Miles. We'll wait for the full results to roll in, though. But what a performance that's been in race 2. A lot more action throughout race 1 as the drivers got their footing, but this one was steely determination from all on the run in through today's 2nd race of 2. See for Miles approaching the line, Division 12th in the AMS today. Not the way he would have hoped, but sees the checkered flag 2 laps down because of a disconnect. Soldiered on through. It's the mentality of so long as we see the checkered flag, nothing else matters. That's driven him forward today. That great determination throughout from the 96, number 15 across the line. Curtis Belbray, Division 10th. We see, though, the one outlier being Cal Ford. So your 2 division winners before we get the final results on through here in race 2 of round 8. Christian LeBay and Brandon Carr. Double trouble then from the 119 and the 888 dominant here in Zandvoort. Your podium sitters by category in the pros, Todd and Simard. In the AMS, Jackal and Grenier-Massey. 2 podiums on the trot then for that 626. Great stuff throughout. As we wait for that final result to roll in. That just about wraps up things here in round 8 of the championship. And as it would happen then, having secured away enough points in this race alone, getting a look back on to Christian LeBay as we wait for the final result just to drop in through. Finger on the trigger here there you have it. Final results on through. LeBay is your 3-time champion here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series by Competizione Performance League. 3 on the trot then. Unmistakable performance by LeBay. And he had to wait just a little while longer there to see things through on Season 3's championship. But now as we head into round 9, nothing left to lose for this one. Undefeated then in the top level of this championship. Plenty still on the cards down in the AMs, but what a performance it's been throughout for LeBay. We'll try to get a word in with him towards the end of the season in Bathurst next week, but that's all as it would appear then for us today. Brilliant result then. Very, very well done to Christian LeBay, your Season 3 GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series champion. So far then, undefeated. Season 1, 2, and 3 now in the trophy cabinet. And throughout the race results then today, great result then for George Todd, second, and 2 times on the trot there for second place, as it would appear now having gone into one of the warehouses. You see there Sillard on the podium. And then down in the AMs, double victories today then for Brandon Carr of Breaking Point Racing. The Jackal looks to possibly emerge into the lead of the AM Championship over Andrew Veldkamp amidst dismays for the 616 in both races today. And on 2-time podiums on debut, Cedric Grenier-Massey in the 626 Let's Race Mate BMW. Well, that's all from us here today. Very well done to all drivers. And very well done then to LeBay, your 3-time champion in this series. That's all from us. If you're catching on with us later on, we'll be live later tomorrow. That's all. Take care and good night.